Coming up on today's wrestling news, are WWE set to make big changes to Seth Rollins' character?
Wyatt 6 secrets from the Monday Night Raw massacre.
Jim Ross gives his thoughts on Ricochet to AEW.
An insane clown posse versus CM Punk.
What? I'm Adam Wilborn.
I'm Michael Hamflett.
And this is the news. So Seth Rollins returned on last night's episode of Monday Night Raw. He is set to face Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship and Money in the Bank in, 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that?
Big stuff, very soon.
Very, very soon. But some intriguing things regarding his character was noticed by several people. I'm talking about his Titantron. I'm talking about the way they addressed him on social media. But they also arguably conflict with, I think, his name banner and the way he is still being described on the WWE.com website and the roster page and what have you. I'm talking about freaking. Because he was addressed as Seth Rollins on his Tron.
On commentary.
On commentary and on social media. But the freaking thing was still in his little name banner that popped up. And obviously on WWE.com, as I said. But potentially a sign of a move away from his wackier side, let's say.
Stuck out, didn't it?
Yeah.
Stuck out. And I think what's interesting is if you haven't watched Monday Night Raw yet, of course, tune in for our Raw review podcast later on, where we'll be going into the granular detail on all of the episode. But Seth Rollins' return did obviously mark, his immediate return back to the main event. And it was certainly an ostentatious white suit he went with, but the beard was trimmed, similar to what we saw when him and Becky Lynch attended. Was it the Kentucky Derby or something like that? He was like slightly cleaner cut. He was, looking sharp, but not, as you say, looking quite as wacky and as zany. And it was very telling that the Seth Rollins graphics that appeared on the screen, which obviously now with the way the Titantron sound up, just surround the character, was of Seth Rollins. I think there was an odd, old revolutionary logo that flashed up, and people were like, he was referencing his days in the Shield and his quest to win back the world title. It was all very serious for a man that we have associated for so long now with the silly.
Yes.
Like the freaking.
Still got that whoa.
It'd be mad to drop all that cold, wouldn't it? But the freaking for the longest time was like, what on earth have they added to his name? But then he kind of made the character attach itself to that, didn't he? He kind of got that over to the point where it's like, Seth freaking Rollins, I get that. I don't understand it, but I get that. So it did feel like the start of a shift for him, and maybe that's, again, the fact that it's half and half certainly stuck out to me maybe as a bit of a conscious choice on the various bodies' behalves.
Really intrigued to see where they go with him as well, because you have to assume he's not just going to come in and straight away win the world title. Big surprise, by the way, to have him coming back. I haven't heard anything about him returning. But it feels weird to suddenly do, like I say, just a few weeks build to have him take the world title. And then, him versus Gunther would be awesome. But so would Damian Priest, I think it's fair to say. And, well, I have a theory, but I'm going to sit on that theory until another video we're going to be doing a little bit later on today. Because, I don't know, it's great to have him back. Long term, obviously, you've got so much to delve into with potentially going after Cody again, or what happens when Roman returns. But right now, you're a bit like, wow, great to have you back, Seth. I don't really know what to do with you. And this, potential shift in character could sort of reflect that of him being sort of in between personas, perhaps.
Yeah, which I guess could lead us nicely into our second story, which is, of course, the return of the Wyatt 6. Look, I'm going to run down some of the stuff that happened on last night's Raw, some of the details that we know of it, but we're going to dive much deeper into this on a video today that will be dropping on the What Culture Wrestling main feed. Pretty much probably when you're watching this, myself, Wilborn and Sidge are going to kind of pick at this in a bit more detail and kind of like what we thought, what we might have learned.
They killed people.
It was insane. It was indeed a massacre that was promised on Clash at the Castle on Saturday. Michael Cole very much, that's a bit unsettling. Maybe you should have taken it a bit more seriously, was the message apparently left by the Wyatt 6 as the very end of Raw cut from Jey Uso celebrating, not by accident seemingly, with the fireflies, only to all the lights going out. The identical kind of teasers of that looping piano key that played when Bray returned at Extreme Rules 2022. That doorway outline that we saw.
Let's call it.
That's very good. I like that. That terminology, that is smart. So the camera went through this sort of doorway into the back where it revealed.
Well, not before Nikki Cross crawled.
Sorry,
out.
yes. So the first reveal, each member was sort of revealed one by one. Nikki Cross was the first to sort of crawl towards the camera and the lantern and lead you through the door. And the door, or the cameraman, but the door took you into this massacre that was promised. It was a sight of backstage and of Gorilla, strewn with just blood and bodies everywhere, one by one. individual members of the Wyatt Six were revealed. Now, they were all masked with some of the similar iconography of the Wyatt stuff we've seen over the years, like links to Huskers to Pig and Ramblin' Rabbit and all of those sort of things from Wyatt lore, but it was very clear who each of these members were, not least when one by one they kind of walked out the joint together. We had Dexter Loomis, we had Joe Gacy, we had, of course, Bo Dallas in the Uncle Howdy character himself, all joining up with Nikki Cross, Eric Rowan.
Good to see him back.
Yeah, good to see him back as like the sort of the tall monster of the group, sort of stood at the back, and that very much felt like a throwback to the original Wyatt family, seeing him back in all the gear again. But the devastation was left. Chad Gable was visibly laid out and bloodied with, frankly, what looked like a sort of almost like a bullet wound in his head. But there was like blood emerging from something in his head. There has been some sleuthing done online about some of the shots that were harder to make out that suggest that maybe Braun Strowman and Gunther.
I saw the Gunther one,
which would be quite the jump for those characters to have been taken out by the Wyatt Six. But I guess maybe more will be revealed over the day. It was left sort of intentionally vague, but Gorilla was just a bloodbath. You could see people in suits and ties. The WWE light was flickering. The Wyatt Six logo
going on,
flashed across the screen. WWE immediately dropped the Wyatt Six merchandise afterwards to reveal that it is Wyatt Six, S-I-C-K-S. Only the 5 of them on screen, but perhaps the 6th member is obviously Bray Wyatt's legacy being paid tribute to. Perhaps it's Alexa Bliss, who has teased an eventual linking up with the group, or indeed another member. And just to add to it, obviously there's been loads of reaction online to this, as there is always when you have the launch of Wyatt characters. But I thought Jey Uso's was one of the more interesting ones. He was asked just briefly on Raw Talk about this, and he said, you saw the ending of Raw too. I don't want any smoke with them. For all I care, they can have the Fireflies back. I want no problem with them. Very happy I did activate the Fireflies. So he's taking credit for those making their return, but has already said, you guys.
I'm going to concentrate on Money in the Bank. Thanks very much.
I appreciate that. You have that back. So already they've got characters either selling fear or in some cases death. Chad Gable is advertised for a Money in the Bank qualifier next week, but it now remains to be seen if he'll be in that or not.
Unfortunately, Chad Gable no longer to compete, being dead.
It was wild.
I really enjoyed it. You know what? Because I will say this. I think I've mentioned this whenever we talked about this. I was excited to see what it looked like, but I was incredibly nervous because it's such a tightrope you have to walk with this sort of thing. But the ominous nature of it all, the intrigue is developed. That's never really been the issue, I suppose, with any character, whether it be the Uncle Howdy stuff, the return of Bray Wyatt, the original Bray Wyatt. It's where you go from here, and I suppose you and Sid will get into that a little bit later on today. We'll talk more in detail on that.
It always generates that kind of interest, that kind of conversation, debate, speculation, and I'd say a little bit of wonder. There are definitely people that have seen this reveal, and it's kind of lit up. The old phrase from radio has lit up the switchboards today, so we are looking forward to diving deeper into that. Stay tuned.
But if I was in WWE, I wouldn't be too concerned because, you've got Braun Breaker and he can just run through anyone, as you saw he did to Ludwig Kaiser on last night's episode of Raw. Last week, obviously, we saw him destroy Ricochet, seemingly writing him off. Some speculation as to whether that was one big final pitch of you can try and make a comeback. There was no Samantha Irvin, I should mention, on last night's show either. So whether or not he's going to be sticking around in WWE is one thing. But Jim Ross on his Grilling JR podcast, one of the best podcasts out there, Hamlet, that's not ours, as was asked about Ricochet going over there to AEW, and whether or not he was surprised, if he would be surprised to see him. And he said, not really, but I don't know how much difference he makes. Depends on how he's brought in and how he's presented, how he's positioned. He's a talented kid, there's no doubt about that. I've met with him before and I like him. He's very spot heavy. I'd like to see him be able to do a little bit more fundamentally sound, but he's a very talented athletic kid, so who knows. But it seems to me to be kind of obvious that that the AEW brand would be where he might migrate to. So obviously, it's sort of echoing what we've said with regards to Ricochet in terms of, obviously, it makes sense if he's not sticking around in WWE for him to go to the second biggest company. That is AEW. You can already I could probably just pull names out of this box and we'd find some dream matches in there for Ricochet, for example.
Probably could, or I think we should. Gotta play the game.
Ospreay's the obvious one, following in the WCPW footsteps, who of course invented that match.
Well, indeed, but I personally want to see Ricochet versus Toa Leona.
There you go. And I'd like to see him versus...
Go on, no, read that one out.
That was Athena.
That'd be goated. That would be absolutely brilliant.
He'd sell the Pack. There you go.
Oh my God, we've done it.
Like
Three dream matches for Ricochet already.
But it is also tempered, as JR says, with the fact of he's a flippy guy, and like they've got a lot of them. Yeah,
this sticks out, doesn't it? Jim Ross, you know, like obviously commentates for the special occasions at this point, and we always wish Jim Ross the best in his battles with his health and things like that, and an icon of the industry, and certainly somebody with an AEW that like. I don't know, like, I wouldn't say a man with power, but a man with great influence.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Like, what he thinks and what he says will matter. Like, that's one of the things he probably provides to AEW, even if it's at a distance in a kind of, through this podcast or through like a version of consultancy, I guess, or like, that's why you have a Jim Ross on the books, isn't it? So much experience, so a wealth of knowledge, and it's like, right, to just brush off what he says because he's maybe like of the old school or of things like that. It's to sort of, I don't think it's to take it seriously enough. I think there's multiple sides to every argument of pro wrestling, and I just think it's interesting that somebody with this kind of potential influence within AEW is being honest enough to say, like, I think what he's saying without saying there is like, there are, like, it really is where the best wrestle, but how many can you take at one point they're the best wrestle? Like, we've debated about this, and I'm sure like you'll let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on Ricochet in AEW. I know there tends to be a bit of pushback when the sort of sweeping statement is AEW roster's full. Like, WWE's where the place you can go. I know it's never quite as binary and as simple as that, but there are a lot of wrestlers inspired by Ricochet that I like Ricochet. The dream match thing, you really could pull them out, but then the problem is, as like many people have always said, if you're having your dream roster, you wouldn't want a roster full of main eventers, just like you wouldn't want a roster full of openers, just like you wouldn't want a roster full of Ricochets. You need that diversity and that mix and the debate will be based on prior experience, how AEW will be able to feature Ricochet and keep him special rather than just getting through the first couple of dream matches.
Look, Sidge is a huge fan of Ricochet's. He's obviously a huge fan of AEW, but even he said, I don't know whether we need him right now.
It's a challenge, isn't it?
Because someone then is going to have to be knocked down another peg, because Ricochet is obviously going to be presented great from the moment he arrives. And then you're like, okay, we talked yesterday about Konosuke Takeshita. He's going to be in the G1 now. Where the hell's Ricky Starks? You know, there's only a certain amount of TV time, and he's spinning a lot of plates. Let's just say that with Tony Khan. It'd be very interesting. Although I sense people have probably said you don't need to sign X before, and he's gone, I'm gonna do it anyway. Actually, I will say, Will Ospreay versus Ricochet is probably the second biggest feud I'm looking forward to this year. The first being
Insane Clown Posse versus CM Punk.
What?
It was funny when you were mentioning about like the sort of Tony Khan and AEW and how to fit it all in. Like the Collision video package, the 1 year of Collision video package felt like 10 years in a single year, because obviously it started with the likes of CMFTR and like everything that was taking place those first sort of 8 weeks of Collision. It feels so much longer than a year ago that CM Punk was lifted out of the AEW puzzle and put back into the WWE one. I did not anticipate that the Insane Clown Posse would think, right, now is our time to strike. I don't think anybody else did, but Violent J doesn't care for timing. He cares only for apparently giving CM Punk a piece of his mind. He took to multiple social media channels last night. I believe it was at least on his Instagram and his X. Violent J from the Insane Clown Posse. The Insane Clown Posse, if you're not aware, a musical act that also in the late 90s featured prominently in WWE and WCW, and then went on to kind of have like sideways interest in wrestling through their appearances in TNA, their formation of Juggalo Championship Wrestling, and like they've always kind of had like this link to pro wrestling through A, being massive fans, and B, being in it when it was the hottest in North America it had ever been. So there's always these like people cross paths that you wouldn't expect, and Violent J and CM Punk were apparently two of these paths. I'm just going to read this word for word from Violent J.
I've not heard this before, by the way.
Right, well, we're coming in hot. CM Punk for life. You wouldn't shake our hands in TNA, little and you clown on only the real friend you ever had in Colt Cabana, you I shared my bank account with my mum before she passed, you little insensitive you little heartless alien. Suck my you little weak bitch. Couldn't beat a jobber in UFC, you f***ing nearly pathetic little joke. Come beat me up, bitch. You suffer inside everyone, and their mama knows that. Get your head right out, you little suffering ass bitch. Violent J of Insane Clown Posse, just as legendary as you, little bitch. Face it. Thoughts?
That's one way to spend your Monday evening, I suppose.
What?
Where the hell did this come from?
Is this when Punk's confirmed on SmackDown, he says, I am cleared by the doctors. Not the WWE ones, but Juggalos, I'm coming for you. And then he just pours all that, what is it, that Fago? Is that what they're kind of like, they're pop all over his
Drew
head?
McIntyre, after the beating I took from you in the Royal Rumble, one thing I'm not ready is to face you at SummerSlam. But I believe the fans deserve a replacement. I think you know the guy. Just quickly put some... It's Clown Man Punk. Actually,
calls out Violent J. So Punk being Punk, making his return to SmackDown in Chicago this weekend. I fully expect him to just lift some of this stuff word for word and have some fun with it.
I hate you with every ounce of my being, Punk. I don't think about you at all.
Are you a juggalo? Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, I'm very much treading on eggshells here because from what I've heard, don't poke the bear with this sort of thing.
They are loud and big in their support of the ICP, of the Juggalos.
They are indeed.
More gristle to your meal, I suppose. But you just there's never not somebody swinging for Punk, is there? Like, I don't know if Violet J's arms are too short to box with God, but it was certainly bizarre last night watching it come up anyway.
Jesus, what? Yeah.
So over a handshake in TNA, according to the start of this story. Yeah.
Big Drew fan, he must be.
We will keep you posted if Punk retorts in any way to this one.
What a surreal... it's been a weird day anyway with everything happening on Raw, and then let's come into this.
Now, like wrestling, remember this when you're watching this, that you pick the right hobby, because there is nothing like this.
Yeah, he's never going after Lionel Messi. You're a...
Yeah, that's it. Like, Mbappe's nose is broke. All of a sudden, you get like some pop star from 15 years ago be like, good, I'm glad your nose is broke. Once you didn't give me a shirt when I asked for it when I held a sign up.
Let us know your thoughts on that.
Please do.
Everything we've discussed, the new direction for Seth Rollins, and of course the arrival of the Wyatt 6. I don't know, but like Hamlet said, we'll be talking about it in more detail later on the channel as well. But for now, my thanks to Michael Hamlet. Thank you for joining us. And why not check out this video right here? We'll see you soon.